Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Renee Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Dr. Katrina Ubell, author of How to Lose Weight for the Last Time. How many of you want to know how to do that? And today, Dr. Katrina and I are going to be speaking on the topic, how to lose weight by taking control of your emotions. Welcome, Dr. Katrina.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Yes, excellent to have you here too. All right, so let me guys give you a brief introduction and then we will dive right into our topic. Dr. Katrina Ubell's book, How to Lose Weight for the Last Time, offers brain-based solutions for dropping pounds and keeping them off without suffering or sacrifice. As a pediatrician, Dr. Katrina Ubell, MD, always struggled with her weight. She was either 40 pounds overweight or struggling to lose that weight. Although she'd regularly counsel parents on the importance of keeping their kids healthy and fostering good eating habits, Dr. Ubell, as a busy professional, was never able to do the same for herself. Like everyone else, she tried many different diets and programs, but would always regain the weight. In 2015, Dr. Ubell cracked the code for making weight loss permanent and developed a program targeted at busy physicians like herself who often deprioritize their own wellness. As a weight loss coach, Dr. Ubell has helped over 1,000 busy physicians and professionals find and stay at a healthy weight with her brain-based program. And she's now ready to bring this program to the general public like you. Dr. Ubell's program doesn't involve any unrealistic diets, plans, special foods, supplements, or even rigorous exercise protocols. Instead, she uses a deep understanding of the brain and behavior patterns to get results. Through her work, she's been able to uncover and speak into universal obstacles that stand in her way of losing and keeping the weight off. I know we're all know about the yo-yo diet. You diet, you lose the weight, you start eating again because you got to, and you put it back on. So I'm very interested in this conversation. So let's start off, Dr. Katrina. I understand that you lost 50 pounds. Tell us about your weight loss journey and how you cracked the code to keep it off, because you look pretty good right now looking at you.
Well, Myrna, thank you. Thank you for that. I'll always take a compliment. I appreciate that. I think, just to what you spoke to, I struggled with my weight for so long. When I was younger, I can identify that I definitely did some emotional eating, which I define as just eating food when you're not physically hungry, right? Your body is not asking for food, yet you're eating anyway, right? But, I might have fluctuated a little bit, but I was, relatively active kid and, it was never really too big of a problem. It was when I went to medical school that things really started to become a problem for me, mostly because all of the things that we do to enjoy life, like hobbies and having time to, enjoy nature and move our bodies and time to make a meal, like all of that gradually dropped off as I went through my education. I mean, most people can understand that it's a quite rigorous training process. And so I really started noticing that, there just was no time for anything but studying, working in the hospital. And what they will offer you in the hospital is, food that's not particularly nutritious, I mean, there was even a Wendy's fast food restaurant in our hospital, and that was like the fastest thing that you could go, where you could get some food. So I started struggling there. It was in medical school that I went to Weight Watchers for the first time. And, I'm a high achiever. You give me, a list of rules and I'm like, I can do this. I will suffer, follow it. Right. And so I did that. And I did
will eat a carrot.
Yeah. Right. I will totally sit here starving, so hungry. I remember that's when I really started drinking diet soda because I think the bubbles, like the carbonation, like filled my stomach up more, Like, I mean, it's pretty crazy town. Some of the stuff that I would do all in the effort to get the weight off. But then what I found was that I got the weight off, but I knew I didn't want to eat the way, I had been eating. I wasn't going to count points the rest of my life. I had no interest in doing that. And so I know this sounds so silly, but deep down, I kind of hoped that like I was cured. You know what I mean? That like I wouldn't go back to any old habits. It's,
Mhm.
I kind of joke, it's like I kind of thought I had a brain transplant, that I wasn't me anymore, which doesn't make any sense. I recognize that, but like I really didn't have any kind of meaningful plan for maintaining at all. And so of course then I didn't, and I regained the weight back. And then I repeated that cycle, I mean, literally at least 10 times
Wow.
over the course of my, the rest of my training in residency and then out in practice. And then I tried some other things in there too. So I really was either 100% of the time trying to lose weight, like working on losing weight, or actively gaining it back again. And it
Wow.
really was, well, so I'd had my last baby. I had lost that weight by struggling, like, because I didn't know any other way. But I had like sworn to myself, like, I mean it this time. I'm not going to gain the weight back, because I knew I wasn't going to have any more babies to, like use as an excuse. And then I
Mhm.
promptly gained the weight back. And I was so like, oh my gosh, what? Like, what? And the thing, I'm sure so many of your viewers and listeners will understand, like, when you are a intelligent, capable woman, right? Like, and you just, in on so many areas of your life, and you cannot figure this one thing out. It's inexplicable. Like you just cannot grasp, like figure out like why can I not solve for this? Like, do I literally have to have a completely different life? Do I have to be able to devote most of my waking hours to this process? I mean, that's what it started to feel like was required. And so I was about to turn 40. A lot of people around those milestone birthdays, right? We start to just kind of reevaluate everything. And one of the
Mhm.
things I was thinking about was my body, my weight. And it just felt, I mean, I honestly, like, I think so many people feel like I just was like, I'm just not sure it's even possible for me. I've tried so many times, I've tried so many different things. Do I just need to maybe just give up hope and, just work on accepting the fact that a lot of people gain weight as they get older, and maybe I just need to come to peace with that,
I know
or
what you're
if,
talking about. I got to a point where
yeah.
I just accepted mine too. Anyway, go ahead.
Mhm, yeah, right, or I knew that I had to stop continuing to do the same thing again and again that was not working, right? Like you
Right.
finally got it through, like, that does not work for you. Maybe let's stop trying it over and over and over again. And so I wasn't quite at a point yet where I felt like I had exhausted everything, but that didn't also really mean that I knew exactly what else to try. I will say that at the time I also just, it was kind of just an internal feeling that like surgery or medications and stuff like that just didn't feel like the right thing
Mhm.
for me, so not to judge anybody else, but it just like that didn't resonate as a possible solution for me. So I was just trying a bunch of different things, and through a very circuitous path, like I tried more things that didn't work, but through that path, I was introduced to the concept of emotional eating. Before then, people would talk a lot about like compulsive eating and that term, and I did not resonate with that term. I was like, I'm not like I thought like a compulsive eater is literally just like out of their mind,
Binging.
just stuffing
Right,
food in, yeah,
right.
binging
Binging,
constantly.
right.
I was like, that is not
Yes.
me. So
Mhm,
I
mhm.
didn't recognize myself in any of that. But when I found out that emotional eating is eating for any reason other than fuel for your body, I was like, oh yeah, no, sign me
That's
up. I
me, right?
totally do that all
Mhm.
the time. So then it was kind of like, well, that would make sense, right? If I'm eating for reasons outside of my body needing food, then that's probably too much food. And then that would lead to weight gain. I mean, like that's logical. That makes sense. So then I thought, well, okay, then how do I stop this emotional eating thing? And so I started looking at reading some books and things. And what I found was that there was just a lot of like describing the problem. And I'd be like, great. And they're going to have some great solution. There would be no solution. The book would be done. And I'd be like, so what are you supposed to
Yes,
do? Just like accept that this is
yes.
your life. So I ended up through a total random like another thing, finding out about life coaching, which I'd heard about on Oprah back in the day. I remember her using that word, but I didn't even really know what it meant. And I
Mhm.
thought, I haven't tried this. Like this lady says she can and like help me stop emotional eating. Like, I mean, it's something I haven't tried. Like, let me try it. And it completely changed my life. I realized through the process of being coached and then becoming a coach how completely shut off I was to my
Mm,
emotional life,
mm,
which I now understand, not from like a blaming perspective, but I was raised by German immigrants. Emotions are not a thing. Like that's, we don't do
mm,
that. Like you just keep that all buttoned down
mhm.
and you don't talk about it. And like, what's crying going to do? Nothing. So you better just not even start. And, like just,
Mhm,
pull yourself
mhm,
up and just go. Right. And there
mhm,
is a time and a place for that. Right. That's what I'm saying. I've no blame to them. But what the result was of that for me was I did have emotions. I had um no one teaching me what to do with them. So I figured out for myself as a child, hey, when I eat sugary things, I actually feel a little better, you know?
mhm,
And so it's a way that this is my, my personal story. I started to make that connection as a young child that, what, instead of feeling bad, you can just eat and feel better. And so eventually that just caught up to me because I got busy and I was older, And so I had to figure out other tools, like what else do you do with emotions? And I say this because I think a lot of us think, especially if we're in midlife, like, why don't I know this already? Like, I must have missed the memo. Like, how come no one taught me this? Because nobody taught anybody this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if
Yeah,
you know this, you're
they
super
don't teach it
lucky
in
because
school, and
no, the
your parents
majority of people,
usually
your
don't know
parents,
it.
right?
So,
Or
yeah.
whoever raised
Mhm,
you, like it's
yep,
usually not going to be coming from them. So
mhm,
there's no shame in being a fully grown person, and discovering this for the first time and realizing like, oh my gosh, like no wonder. I mean, it makes so much sense. Of course I would overeat when I didn't know any other way to deal with my emotions. And, I have a busy life. I have 3 kids. I have a husband who is a surgeon. So he's busy life.
mhm,
I'm like a doctor. Like, I mean, there's a lot of ups and downs, and I had no other tools, no other skills. So of course I would use food. Some people, alcohol, like, but for
mhm,
me, it was more
mhm,
food.
mhm.
So what I really had to do was learn how to make food about fueling my body with occasional pleasure on purpose, right? It doesn't mean like you can't ever enjoy it. And the food can feel good or taste good, right? It doesn't have to taste gross. That I learned too. That was one of my big things. I was like, I don't eat food that doesn't taste good ever. I don't care how healthy people say it is. Like I'm just not doing that anymore. Forced myself for too long to do that. So if food then becomes about nourishing your body, listening to your actual hunger cues, reconnecting to those, understanding the role that your brain plays in our desiring of food, our wanting food, our urges to eat, and learning how to reduce that to a normal level. It's normal to want food. It's not normal to be thinking about it all the time or have intrusive thoughts about it, and then figuring out how to actually deal with and cope with my emotional life in ways that don't involve food. Like that results in weight loss. I sometimes will say, like, if you were hungry an appropriate amount, wanted food an appropriate amount, and knew how to, support yourself in your emotional life without food, like, would it be hard to lose weight? Like, probably not that much, because when we're dieting, what's so uncomfortable is we're so hungry and all we can think about is food. And then we've taken away, because we're forcing ourselves into this diet, we've taken away our only coping mechanism for, dealing with the ups and downs of life. So of course it feels horrible. Right. So that's how I lost 50 pounds. And then I really had thought for a long time I'm the only doctor who struggles. Like, we all do, right? We all think we're like, terminally unique.
You-
um,
Right,
you
right.
know, and I just thought no one else struggles like I do. And then I realized, I think there might be some other doctors who feel the same way. And it turned out there were a lot of people who also were suffering in silence, thinking they were the only one who struggled. And so I started, helping them, thinking like, if this worked for me, it might work for you. And then it did work for them. And then, starting to see like, oh, wow, like it doesn't matter how busy your life is, how unpredictable your schedule is, you know, we can make this work. These foundational principles will work for anybody.
All right, I love that. Wow, that's a great intro. And um, uh, there's a couple of circle backs that I can have. One would be, when you're busy and you can't afford, like for instance, you talked for one about being a doctor and there's no proper food in the hospital and you're working all the time and you don't have any time to cook. That's when people eat junk food. But I'm not going to
Yes.
go there because that's not the purpose of the conversation. But what you're talking about is emotional eating, and a lot of people have it, including me. Now, so what I want to go to right away is, so let's say, like, for instance, right now I am doing intermittent fasting, and I'm supposed to eat my dinner at 7, between 6 and 7. I'm not supposed to eat again. And it's incredibly hard not to do it. And you're right. My brain is telling me that I need to go eat something, and I'm not hungry.
Yes.
I might get hungry 10:30 or 11 o'clock when I go to bed, but at 8 o'clock I'm not hungry, right? Or 9 o'clock I'm not hungry.
Yeah.
But I want to eat. The desire from my brain wants to eat. I don't know. There's some emotion there that, and I know it's there because I'm aware of it. Right. So let's go straight to the point. How are you teaching in the book and your clients how to stop that desire?
Yes. I am so glad you brought it up because so many people struggle with this, Myrna. I mean, really, like, it's the nighttime eating for people is so hard. So the first thing we want to do, though, is we want to, like, back out a little bit. You think of, like, the video camera, like, zooming in, like, we want to zoom out and look at the big picture a little bit. And for everybody, it's going to be a little bit different, but there's often some common themes. A lot of this is just habit. It's just what we do. And so our brains are like, hey, it's 8 or 9. It's time to eat. So some of it is just the sheer habit of, like, this is just how we roll. This is what we've been doing. Some people, we've been doing this maybe even our whole lives. The family always had the snack, in front of the TV or whatever. So sometimes if it's really mostly just about the habit, then we need to just change up the habits. Something that I found can work really pretty quickly and easily for the people I've worked with is to just change up some of your other usual routines. Like, for instance, if you typically by 8 or 9 are taking an hour to watch a show on the couch or something, or sitting down, with, spend a little time on your phone, and then you would usually do that with a snack, then maybe it's going to be a lot harder to sit there and do that without your snack. You feel like you're missing something, like your brain's just like, hello, like, go and get it. And you start feeling more of those urges. So sometimes, just mixing it up, like going and maybe getting ready for bed early, and then you can watch your show maybe on your phone or an iPad or something in a different room, like just mixing it up for a couple of weeks so that it's different. Sometimes I think of it as like, and it depends on the person, but if you've been traveling maybe and you're in a hotel and you had dinner already, like, would you go out of your way to go get your snack at 8 or 9 p.m. or would you be like, no, I'm fine? But what's different? The environment. You're in a totally different environment. So we know it's possible to not do it. We just have to kind of switch things up for a time period. I have found that for some people, they find that even after doing that, if they go back to the rest of the environment that was the same, even like maybe months later after they haven't been snacking at night for a long time, it starts to try to creep back in again. So awareness is really important. We have to really stay aware of, like, how am I feeling? Wow, I'm really feeling an urge to eat today. I wonder what that's about. Like, getting curious about it rather than what so many of us typically do, which is to beat ourselves up, to get frustrated, to think this is never going to work. Like, instead, just like trying to understand it better. So here I am doing this. I haven't done it in a long time, but I want it. Like, what is it about that? Or maybe, I can fulfill whatever it is that I'm needing in a different way. I know for myself, I really just enjoy, like, feeling some comfort in the evening. And as kind of silly as this sounds, but I live in Wisconsin, so it's cold here a lot of the time. I just want to feel cared for and comfortable, and you know what I mean? Like, it's the end of the day and you just want to have some time where you feel cozy and, good. And so I can create that for myself with making, like, a cup of my favorite tea. or for some people it might be decaf coffee or something, not in a weird diety way of like, you're not going to eat, you're going to drink tea instead, because I've done that too. But in a way of like, what is the need that I actually am trying to fill?
Right.
And here's a way that I can do that where, I actually think of it as like, it's kind of not the worst thing to hydrate yourself a little bit before you go to bed.
Right.
Maybe have a little bit of tea. I like mint tea, so I have some mint tea. And so I am putting something in my mouth, but it's just not food. Where
Right.
before I would sit there and just be eating cookies and cookies and cookies. And my signal to tell me to stop was I actually felt ill.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like that
Wow.
is not the
Okay.
same.
Right.
This is a very different
Or
situation.
ice cream is
You
some
know,
people's choice,
your ice
right?
cream.
Or
Exactly.
cake,
Exactly.
or those
Yeah. Like,
things.
I mean, it
But
could
it's
be, and
all comfort
sometimes some
food.
people,
Yeah,
it's chips, or whatever it
comfort
is, like
food.
some of
Right.
the salty stuff. Yeah. Like
But
whatever
you're
that
right.
is.
It's usually comfort food because for some reason,
Mhm.
so you found a way to get the comfort. I'm
Mhm.
picturing a cozy blanket, maybe a fireplace
Mhm.
and tea.
Yeah, and just like
That's what I'm
feeling
picturing.
taking care of myself,
Yes.
like
Mhm.
doing something nice for ourselves. And that's really what we are thinking we're doing when we're getting a snack, is we're doing
Food,
something
right.
nice for ourselves. A lot of people, like, depending on, I mean, probably doesn't really matter what your obligations are throughout the day. By the time 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock rolls around, you feel like you've hit the finish line, like now it's
Yes.
your time. Now you get to do something nice for you. Yes, you do. But what's actually not really nice for you is eating food your body doesn't need.
Right. Right.
So it's changing
Right.
that perspective. Not like I can't have it. You can have whatever you want. You want, you're an adult. You get to do whatever you want. But do you like the result of you doing that, of eating that
Yes.
food, And you're right. When you start to kind of realize, like, I don't like that result. I don't like this struggle with food and my weight. And recognizing that when your brain is offering you what I call over desire, like desiring food, where it's really like, no, listen, go to the pantry now, like you're right. Like the more you don't do that, the more it quiets
Yes,
down.
it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true.
So if you can
You
get
try
through
to
that
turn off that
time,
mind. You
distract
try to
yourself.
say,
Yeah.
yeah, you try to say, I'm not going to do it. It's extremely hard.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just better to probably go and take a little piece than to try to turn off that. Because listen, I've gone through this
Human
with a
brain, the
lot of
human brain.
books and
Mhm.
a lot of people talking about, get up and take a walk instead of going, just like you talk, interrupt the pattern, whether it's getting
Yeah.
some tea or walking to the bathroom. But you're very right. A lot of people struggle with nighttime eating, which is why intermittent fasting is blowing up because
Mhm.
yes, you do not eat at night.
Right. And that's the thing.
and
That's the thing about it is
and
it's a hard line. Like there's no
yes,
more eating for today. So
yes,
for some
right.
people that can be very helpful because it is so like, black and white, it's like very
Right,
clear, like
right,
you are
right.
or you aren't. Now, what you have to be careful of, where some people will really struggle with intermittent fasting, is during their fasting window, they do just fine and they're not eating. But when the fasting window or the eating window happens,
Mhm.
they really overeat due to emotional reasons. I'm not going to be
Mm.
able to eat again for a long time. This is my chance. I mean, I
Yeah,
probably am not totally full yet. I probably could have a little bit more, like, right. That's where we have to be
never
so
thought of
careful
that.
about our
Never thought of
brains
that. Yes,
and be
yes, yes,
clear
yes,
on what
yes.
it is that we're eating and
Yes.
clear on our hunger cues, but also our satiety cues, because it's very easy to overeat. I have worked with plenty of people who actually have some binging behavior, who had a lot of
Mm.
success in losing weight with intermittent fasting, but the fasting actually made their binging worse. You know what I
Right,
mean? Like when it was time to eat, they felt
right.
completely out of control
Yeah,
for those 6 or 8 hours.
right,
So
right,
it's like
right,
sometimes we have to dial it back. Like, hold on, we are
right.
not ready to go a gazillion hours without eating yet.
To go
We need to
crazy
go
yet.
normal.
There's a word out on that whether intermittent fasting is supposed to be so good for you. I've had several people on the show talk about it. So
Mhm.
they're saying that regardless of what you binge on, once you're fasting, it brings your markers back down. But you also going to give me the second part of the question, which
Mhm.
was how do you stop the desire? Have you found
Yeah.
the secret to
Well,
stopping the
I
desire?
think it's a secret. No one taught me this. So I think it's a secret. So what we do not realize is that we are creating desire, which is a feeling, it's an emotion that we feel. We are creating that or not creating it, depending on how we think. So we think that the food, like we either want it or we don't, like this is just happening to us and that we don't have control over it. But the way we think about the food determines how we feel about it. So the desire that we feel for the food is very largely driven by the way we think about food. And I'm talking things that we think are just true, like, that looks yummy. I like that food. That tastes good. Or even saying things like, ooh, I shouldn't have that. Like that's a thought that we have that increases desire. So a lot of the same thoughts create desire for all of us, but some of them might be, different for us. So we don't realize how complicit we are in creating this desire that we want to go away. We want to have less over desire. We want to have a normal, appropriate amount of desire for food. Yet then we're thinking thoughts all the time about food that make us have more desire. And so recognizing that like, while it may be true that you like that cookie and it would taste good, does thinking that way about it right now actually serve you? And if it's creating over desire, then no. And the good news is as adults, as humans, we get to choose what we think. So when we become more aware of like, oh, when I think that way. So I'm not saying, let me just be clear. I'm not saying that you look at the cookie and you're like, ooh, that's disgusting. And you believe that. Okay. I mean, you could try that if you want. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm
Right.
saying is taking the energy out of our words around it. Like
Mhm.
cookies are things that I enjoy sometimes. Right. Um,
But
I
not
can totally
today.
have a cookie
Right.
anytime I want to, as long as I plan for it.
Okay.
Right? Like things like that. So as soon as we tell ourselves we can't have it or shouldn't have it, all we want is it.
Is one.
Right? So I
Exactly.
just do not. So again, the
Exactly.
power of words, the power of thoughts.
Hmm.
So we just need to be more aware of the narrative we have about the food. A big thing that, when people go on vacation, this is a huge time, right? Like, people really struggle. This is your chance. That's what we're thinking. It's my chance to have this. I won't come back here again. I won't be able to have this if I don't have it now.
Right.
You know, I
Right.
I realized through doing my own work how kind of silly and funny that is to even think that. Because guess what? The vast majority of the most amazing food in the world, we will never taste.
Right.
Like there is
And
always more amazing food
and if
everywhere
you go
you
to
go.
Japan, you can go to a Japanese restaurant in the United States. I get you.
Okay,
Yes.
do you see what I'm saying? Like I was in Paris, I mean, like
Yes.
literally, like it would be so easy. Every bakery, every
Yes.
patisserie, the pastry shops, like you think you need to have everything. You know what? Like there is good food everywhere. It's otherwise it's so based in scarcity, which, honestly, for some people, they had an upbringing where food was kind of either controlled by the grown-ups around them or there just wasn't enough. So I
Hmm.
just want to speak to that because that's often where this can kind of come from. Like if there's food, you need to eat it or being forced to finish it all. Like don't waste it. Doesn't matter if your body wants more or not, kind of overriding those signals. But we just have to be aware of that and recognize like I can always take care of myself. I mean, the world we live in, there is food everywhere. Like you're
Yes.
not going to starve, you know, like you're going to be able to take care of yourself. And even if the only thing available is like something like Doritos or something just, we can all agree on is not the most, supportive or nutritious food for us. You don't have to overeat Doritos.
Right.
Right? You would eat
You
them
can
just
take
for the
four.
physical hunger, like you can be in Paris and taste the tart or whatever, but you don't have to
Yeah.
eat the whole thing necessarily. You don't
Right.
have to
Right.
have
Right.
7 of them.
Right.
You
Right.
don't need to
Right.
be
Right.
stuffing yourself. It doesn't even
Control.
feel so
Right.
good when you're so full, right? But the way that you do that is by supporting yourself, not berating yourself. You shouldn't have that, the mean things that people say to themselves. Instead, going, hey, you know what? Yeah, that probably would taste really good. And you know what? When you're actually hungry and need food, we'll find something that tastes really good. And then you show yourself that you will do that. You will take excellent care of yourself. You don't have to come from this urge-driven place like you're a young child, you know what I mean? And you're not sure if the grown-ups are going to take care of you. You are the
Right.
grown-up. You
Right.
promise yourself,
Right.
I will take care of me. I will make sure my needs are met. So I don't need to be, doing weird graspy things that don't even make any sense. When we're doing that behavior that we're like, I don't even know where did that come from? It's out of this feeling that our needs will not be met. We're not being well cared for. That's the message we have to send to ourselves, right? So even going back to the intermittent fasting, right? So you've had your first meal, you want to have a break before your final meal or whatever for the day, reminding yourself, you know what? You're going to eat again in a couple hours and it's going to taste so good. You don't need to eat more right now. You're good.
Yeah,
Even if you're a little hungry, it's okay. It's
yeah,
totally
yeah.
okay. Your body knows how to handle a little hunger. And then
Mhm.
when it's time to eat, you eat this amazing meal, you slow down, you actually taste it, you get the pleasure out of the food. So it
Right.
tastes really good.
Yeah.
You're not rushing through mindlessly and then going, wait, but I wanted something that tasted good, right? All of
Right.
those things help us
Mhm.
to feel that we're well cared for, that our needs are being met. And then we feel less of that drive or desire to just like eat whatever happens to be in front of us.
That's good. All right. So I want to circle back to the question I said I was going to leave, but so let's talk about people that are busy, right? Because that's what you said that when you were in medical school, you weren't eating right, and then most of the doctors weren't eating right. But that is not just for doctors, even though doctors have an
No.
amazing, we can all identify with being in medical school. I mean, we've seen enough movies to know that it's like 3 hours, 3 days in a row, and you get no rest and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of women,
Mhm.
have a busy life. They
Yeah.
get up in the morning, they got kids, they go to work, they come home, they got to do dinner and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So, you said that we eat bad because we don't have the time, but how do we? And you also say that we know we have an innate wisdom, what we should eat. So let's
Mhm.
take us through a scenario where someone is very busy and they've got, you know, Wendy's, like you said,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
there that's fast and tastes good and all that. So
Mhm.
how do they go and they pick the
Mhm.
good foods
Yeah.
without feeling deprived or without thinking that, this tastes good and this tastes bad because it's all
Mhm.
how you think about it, right? Take us
Well, I
there.
think I think the thing that we have to recognize is that a lot of busy women in particular really think about things very like they live kind of in the extreme swings of the pendulum, right? Either they need to be cooking this like home cooked meal with all these fresh vegetables that takes a long time and is like pretty involved and lots of ingredients, or ain't nobody got time for that, right? We're not doing that. So then I guess we're just eating burgers at Wendy's. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right,
like
right.
and not seeing any different any
Okay.
kind of in
Okay. All
between
right.
there at all,
All right.
right? Like and I'm not, bagging on Wendy's. Like if you love Wendy's, you want to eat Wendy's sometimes,
Yeah.
totally. Like that's
Yeah.
totally okay. It's just doing that again and again and again often doesn't give us the results we want, but also
No,
often
it
we
does
don't
not.
feel good. I mean, we just
Those sandwiches
physically,
like are 1,000 calories.
but also just like I think as we age too, we feel the effects of it more where you're just like,
Right.
I do not like I don't I've had like food hangovers, I feel like. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I drank, but I didn't drink. Like it's literally from the food. So that's what we have to
Yeah.
recognize is that there's so many solutions in between. So many different in betweens. But the biggest thing that we have to recognize when we're very busy, our time is accounted for, is simplifying what we expect of ourselves and what we eat. Those are amazing tools at just making it so much easier. And one way to simplify is so say you do cook at home, or at least some of the time. One of the hardest things is figuring out what to make. And then you need the grocery list, and then you got to order the groceries or go get them or whatever. If you choose maybe 2 weeks worth of meals, maybe three if you feel like you really need a lot of variety that support you. I usually say like choose things that are just like the perennial favorites, that the family likes. If you are cooking for more than yourself, I always look at it like I have 3 kids, so there's 5 of us at home. If 4 out of the 5 of us always like this food, then that's great, right? If there's one person who doesn't like it, they can eat leftovers from something else. Like we'll figure something
Right,
out,
right, right.
and so, but no one's complaining, oh, that again, like everyone's pretty much happy to have it. And it's simple, not a ton of ingredients. You know how to make it. So you're not like reading the recipe,
A
half of it's
recipe.
like, how do
Right,
I
right,
make
right,
this thing something new?
right.
Like that now you have your recipes, like you're just repeating those again and again. Yes, do we need variety? We do. Not probably as much as, some people really argue that we need to. If you're really concerned, you can take a multivitamin and cover your bases,
Right,
because
right,
what's worse is eating a bunch of processed stuff that doesn't have
right,
any nutrition in there.
right.
So that's a little bit of effort to, maybe on a weekend or something that now sets you up for success ongoing, right? Because you're just rinsing and repeating that. So that's an easy way of doing it. Now, what if you also find yourself, you're driving kids to sports, or you're coming from meeting to meeting, you're traveling a lot. Like, what do you do? That's when you can actually extrapolate the same thing. So what's available near you? If you're like at baseball games or soccer tournaments or football or whatever, what's near there? Is there a grocery store with a salad bar or like some prepared food where you can actually see the ingredients and they've actually made the thing for you already, and but it's real food? It's not like, stuff that has a bunch of, non-food food in it, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can make a little list for yourself, keep it on your phone, or like, here's something they have at Chick-fil-A that actually is, pretty supportive. And, maybe if I grab one or two of the fries from whoever I'm with, it's not the end of the world, but I'm not eating all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to Chick-fil-A in the moment going, oh man, all I want is the chicken sandwich. You're going, hey, I already know what I get at Chick-fil-A, or I already know what I get at Wendy's. Most of these places have something that, might not be your 100, your most favorite thing. But part of the problem that we have is in thinking that every meal has to blow our mind. Like, sometimes it's going to be a meal that tastes good enough. It's
Right,
not gross, but like it tastes good enough. And
right.
that's just going to be what it is. And we keep it moving,
Yeah.
because we're just fueling our bodies and we're moving on. And the next meal,
Yes.
that one is probably going to taste better. So just
Well, that's
having some
great too,
planning in
because
advance makes it so
yeah,
easy.
yes, like you were saying, is how you think about it. That
Mhm.
is, change the way you think about something, and the thing you think of will change. One of my favorite sayings.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yes.
if you change the way you think about the burgers, and how you think about fast food, how it tastes good, because a lot of times you're right. If you are 50 pounds overweight, you should actually be feeling guilty eating that food.
Well, you should
You
just
shouldn't.
recognize that you're not
So
supporting your
yeah,
body very well. It's not the
you
kindest thing you could be doing for yourself in the moment,
right, right, exactly. So if you change the way you think about it, you're right. If you think that, not that I don't want it, but anyway, you change your association with it, then you will start to change your behavior towards it. And you're right, it's not going to happen overnight, but it will probably be a gradual change, because, like you
Mhm.
said, I can now look at food and say that's nasty. And some people will look at it and think, ooh, I want that.
Mhm. And here's what I love too, though, is like, you may have thought about that in the past. Sometimes we're like, how can I change my thinking? Well, if you've ever changed your mind about anything ever in your
Yes,
life, then
yes.
you can change the
You
way you
can
think
change your
about
thinking.
something,
Yeah, yeah.
you really can.
I've seen these sandwiches where they have on TV where they've got bacon and they've got this and they've got that. And it's a huge sandwich. And I'm thinking, that is nasty. And I know they have it there because somebody else is going to say, ooh, I want that.
Yeah, of course. Of course. There's going to be people who love that. And here's the thing, we won't even begrudge people where that's their favorite thing. We're just not going to eat that maybe as often, right? Maybe
Right,
that is like
right.
something that we
A
do
treat.
on
Right.
occasion. And then when we
Mhm.
eat it, though, we're not like driving and yelling at the kids and stuffing it in our face. We like sit down and we slow down and we
Yes,
experience it, so
yes,
we
yes,
can get the
yes,
pleasure out of it, right? We're
yes.
like mindlessly eating this thing that's supposed to taste so good. Well, we weren't even mentally present to
Mhm.
experience
Right,
the
right.
goodness that
Yes.
it
You
tasted,
just remind me of cheesecake. That's what I do. Cheesecake is my treat. And
So,
I have it
does that
once
mean,
in a while, but I sit
yeah,
down and I enjoy it and I say,
yeah.
right.
And then when you have a bite or two that don't taste as good as the bite before, not that it tastes bad, but maybe not quite as good, that's when
So
you
you
can
stop.
stop. And this
Right.
takes practice. I had to really practice that, and I had to prove to myself I can do this and still feel really satisfied, because I very much grew up like clean plate, like you eat whatever is on your plate. Like, you better be ready to hit the toilet if like before you stop early.
Well,
Like, you are not allowed to do that,
you're similar to me. Your parents were German immigrants. Mine was immigrants from a third world country like Guyana. So
Mhm.
yeah, we didn't waste food. We didn't throw it in the garbage. We eat
No, I mean, my
it.
parents are both born in World War II. It's like, like, no,
Yeah,
I mean, The stories that they tell, there was nothing. I mean, so you
Good.
understand where that
Yes,
comes from. It's just that
yes,
it doesn't match the world that we live in now. Like
right.
we don't need to live that way
Yes.
anymore. It was
It's
actually,
changed.
being
Right.
able to throw some food away was something that I had to really work on. It
Yeah.
was incredibly hard for
Hard to
me
do. Yeah.
to be
Mhm.
okay with that. It's still something that doesn't come naturally,
Same
but
here.
I work on. Like my
Mhm.
daughter every single morning is throwing out at least some of her breakfast. Like she whatever, how much cereal or whatever she pours for herself, she never has it all. And every single morning, I mean, I would never ever dream as a child of not eating all my cereal. But right, like I
You
remind
could.
myself, like,
I
this is
know.
good. She's stopping when her
When
body has
she's
told her
full.
she's had
Yes,
enough.
yes,
Like, I
yes,
want to
yes.
foster this. This is great. I
Right.
don't want to
Mhm.
tell her, no, you could have gotten another spoonful or two down, which I'm sure she could have. But
Yeah.
that's how we
Yes.
are trained as
Training.
children to
Yes.
ignore our body signals. So we are born with this
Hmm.
knowledge, this wisdom. Babies know when to stop eating. They'll eat
Yes.
more if you force them with the breast or the
Right.
bottle, and then they'll puke, right? Like we all
Yes.
know that, right? It's
It's
too much.
true. It's
Right.
very
And
true.
so over time, we are trained by society, about the people who raise us, by the people like
Yes.
the lunch lady, whoever. Eat your food. Doesn't matter if you don't want it or not. You have to eat that. And then we're like, why am I even eating this? I don't even
You
know.
don't even want it.
So what
Right,
we can
right,
do is
right.
just reconnect
Yes.
to that messaging. It is there. It's just quiet,
Mhm.
it's not beating you over the head. But you got to
Okay.
listen and be willing to go, you know what? I like to look at it like this. Like, what if we just experimented? What if I just stopped eating, because I do actually have a sense of satiety,
Yeah.
feeling like I've had enough. But
Yeah.
then, my brain is like, it's not enough. You're going to be hungry later. It's going to be so terrible. So what I like to then do, because if I just tell myself you're going to be fine, my brain's like, you're crazy. No.
No. Right,
And
right.
like, we need to go eat. So what I
Right.
like to do is say, let's just experiment. What if we stop here? If you're really hungry later, you can definitely
You
eat
can
more.
eat. Right. That's
Right.
good.
So I'm not saying you can't have it. I'm just saying
Right.
for now, let's just see what happens.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
opens the door for me to be able to see how it might be, because I
Hmm.
know I will meet my own needs. Right.
Right.
Because every now and then there probably will be a time, you're extra active or whatever it was. The food didn't
But you're
last
hungry.
didn't
Right.
stick with you
Hmm.
as much or whatever. And you are hungry. You don't have to be scared of that. You can know I will take care of me. But like
That's
the most,
awesome.
your cells are never desperate for like a Girl Scout cookie. You know what I mean? Your cells are desperate for like some hydration and maybe a piece of fruit.
Yeah,
That's what they
yeah,
want.
yeah. I
You
love
know?
it. Okay. So, all right. So, tell us about your book, How to Lose Weight for the Last Time. So,
Yeah.
I understand the main message of the book is emotional eating and the conversation you have in your mind about the food. But what is the predominant message that you want to put out on that?
Yeah, well, the main message is that if you've struggled with overeating slash your weight, right? Because it's not weight for everybody necessarily, right? But just feeling like your relationship with food is not where you want it to be.
Hmm.
I just, my message is it's not your fault.
Mm.
Not that like there's no solution, but we've literally been trained to live our lives this way. And the good news is that you can retrain yourself to do it in a different way. And what I am all about I always say, I don't care what people weigh. It's none of my business. I can make a suggestion, but I don't, I can't possibly know what's the right thing for each individual person. It's not because I think thinner people are better. It's not that at all. It's about
Mhm.
that every person deserves to live a life freed up from the obsession, the struggle, the beating yourself up, the getting your hopes up again, trying this thing, being miserable, like that whole cycle. So, what I like to talk about is what I call peace and freedom around food, like I described before, which is you are just around all the foods. It's Thanksgiving, it's the whatever holidays, like you're there, and all your favorite foods are there, and you're going to enjoy the heck out of them, but you're not going to overeat them. You're not obsessed. You're not sitting there going like, when's the time for pie? Because I can't think of anything else. I can't even hold this conversation because all I'm thinking about is pie. Right. Like you feel like
That
you
is
have the same
Yes.
relationship with food,
Yes.
where when
Mhm.
it's time to eat, you enjoy it, you taste it. You most of the time are nourishing your body with good tasting food, whatever tastes good
Right.
to you. And then, sometimes we have some other extras for fun, but not all the time. And then
Right.
just letting food be that. It doesn't have to be we've given it, a lot of us who struggle, like this excess importance. So what we're doing is we're using our brains to re-regulate that so that we listen to the call of hunger, answer to the, satiety signals when we've had enough. We have an appropriate amount of desire for food, meaning when we start getting hungry, we want to eat. That makes sense, but not in the middle of the day all the time. What's my next meal going to be? And, constantly thinking about it. And that's peace, right? Like no more chatter in your brain about that all the time. And then knowing that you're going to take care of yourself emotionally in other ways. You're not going to, ask food to solve your emotional problems for you anymore.
Yeah.
And right, like I kind of think of it as like food's like our emotional support animal sometimes,
But that's
and
basically what people
recognizing,
use it for.
and it's not, that's not its role. I mean, that's not what it's there for. And we know that because then our bodies reflect that, we don't feel good, right? So that's really the message in the book, is that you have way more control over this than you think you do. You're not broken. It's not like you're hopeless and you can't fix this. I literally just got an email yesterday from a woman who's I think in her late 60s, who had given up, like you had said, like, I just done with this. I'm so tired of it. And then someone recommended my podcast to her a couple years ago, and she is totally at her goal weight now, and just so thankful and grateful for understanding a different way of approaching this. And it's just, my message is, it's possible for you to have peace and freedom around food.
Beautiful. I love it. So where can they get a copy of your book? Tell us about your website. Tell us your social media handles, where they can reach you.
Absolutely. So the book is available really anywhere books are sold, How to Lose Weight for the Last Time. And it's also available in audiobook. I recorded it. So I was the talent on reading it. So that's available on Audible as well. My website is called KatrinaUbellMD.com. My podcast, even though it's called Weight Loss for Busy Physicians, I have a lot of non-physician listeners. People have gotten a lot of help out of it. On my website, there's several free resources that people can download and get themselves started with that. There's actually also some free resources if you buy the book and then put in your order number on our special website, which is KatrinaUbellMD.com/book. So if you go and after you've purchased it and go enter your information, you'll get a whole workshop that I did called Guarantee Your Weight Loss Success. This is a lot about getting yourself ready to start the process so that you can really follow through and make sure that you get the results that you want. So no matter how you buy it, you can go to that website and get those free resources.
That's amazing. And what's your social handles?
Coach Katrina Ubell MD. Mostly on Facebook, Instagram. I think we're on TikTok too. Yeah, those are our main places.
Amazing. This is a great conversation. I did not know you were a podcaster. That's why we float so well.
Yeah, that's right. I recorded episode 329.
Oh my goodness. Awesome. That's great. All right. Well, I know you've got to run. So quickly, just want to thank you guys for tuning in to the Transform Your Mind, Transform Your Life radio podcast and television show. I hope that you were inspired today by Dr. Katrina, and your relationship with food will start to change. Go definitely pick up a copy of her book, tune into her podcast, and I will have a transcript of her conversation with links to her social media handles and her website and her book on the show page, which is blog.myhelps.us. All right, Katrina, thank you very much. This was a great conversation. Best of luck on everything. And until next time, namaste.